5 financial secrets you must keep in silence. Never tell anyone. Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room is almost never the richest one? Think about it. The guy leasing a BMW he can't afford posts about it every weekend. But the man who actually owns 3 properties? You'd never know it from talking to him at a barbecue. Why is that? Here's what most people get completely wrong about wealth. It's not built by talking. It's built by staying quiet at exactly the right moments. And if you're over 45, this might be the most important financial lesson nobody ever taught you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 things that truly wealthy people never reveal about their money, and why that silence is actually their greatest protection. Stick around until the very end, because the last secret is one that could completely change how you handle your finances starting today. If that sounds like something you need to hear, hit subscribe and drop "Silent Rich" in the comments below, and let's get into it. Let me start somewhere you might not expect, because when most people imagine what the truly wealthy keep quiet about, they picture the obvious things: account balances, investment figures, the salary they'd never mention at a family dinner. And we'll get to all of that. But I want to begin with something that on the surface seems to have nothing to do with protecting wealth. I want to start with the act of giving. And I want to ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you did something genuinely good for someone and you told absolutely no one about it? Not a single person. Just you and the act itself. If you can remember a moment like that, hold on to it, because that memory is more financially sophisticated than most people realize. In a world where almost everything is performed for an audience, generosity has quietly become one of the loudest things a person can broadcast. Think about the last time you scrolled through your feed and saw someone announce a donation they'd made, a charity event they organized, a cause they contributed to with a thoughtfully worded caption and a photo. Maybe they tagged the organization. Maybe they got a few hundred reactions and felt genuinely good about it. And look, I'm not here to judge any of that. Most of those people genuinely care about what they're supporting. The impulse behind it is often real and sincere. But somewhere along the way, the act of giving and the need to be seen giving became so completely tangled that most people can't honestly separate them anymore. And that confusion carries a real cost that very few people ever stop to examine. There's a teaching passed down for thousands of years in Jewish tradition. One I keep returning to because it cuts with unusual precision to the heart of this. It describes different levels of charity, arranged from the lowest to the highest form. And at the very top sits anonymous giving. Not just quiet giving. Giving where even the person who received it doesn't know who it came from. No acknowledgement directed back at you. No gratitude. No social return of any kind. Just the act and its impact, with nothing in between. The reasoning behind placing this at the top isn't arbitrary. It's grounded in a very clear-eyed observation about human motivation. The moment your generosity becomes entangled with how it makes you appear, it has stopped being pure generosity and become something else entirely. You gave money, you received admiration. That is an exchange, a fair one perhaps, but an exchange nonetheless, not a gift. And somewhere in a genuinely quiet moment, every one of us knows the difference between those two things, even when we've been pretending not to for years. Now think about the people who have built genuinely lasting wealth. Not the loud ones, not the ones who announce it constantly, but the quiet ones. The ones whose names you might never recognize, but whose influence you can feel in the institutions they've quietly supported, the lives they've altered without a press release, the communities they've shaped without ever needing credit for the shaping. Almost without exception, those people give privately. Not because they're cold or detached from the world. Often, the exact opposite is true. They give more than most people around them will ever know, precisely because no audience is driving the decision. There's no comment section to check the next morning. No one likes to count. The giving stays between them and the impact, clean and uncluttered. There's also a practical dimension here that's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. When you publicly connect your name with charitable giving, you create a kind of social accounting that follows you everywhere you go. People start measuring you against your own generosity. They compare your actions to the standard your public giving has set. He donated to that foundation last year, but he's driving that. Suddenly, something you did from a place of genuine care has become a measuring stick other people pick up and apply to everything else about you. The silence doesn't diminish the act. It actually protects it from being used against you, from being compared against an arbitrary standard, from being weaponized in a conversation you weren't even part of. So if you've been quietly covering someone's bills without making it a story, helping a family member without announcing it, supporting something meaningful without your name attached, don't let anyone make you feel like that matters less because no one witnessed it. That's not less generosity. That might be the most honest, the most complete expression of it. You're building something that can't be taken from you, can't be diminished by commentary, and can't be turned into a social liability at someone else's convenience. And that kind of quiet, consistent giving, practiced over years, never announced, shapes the person doing it in ways that public recognition simply cannot replicate. It builds a kind of character that doesn't need an audience to stay intact. And that character, over time, becomes one of your most durable financial assets. Think about it as a kind of compounding that happens in the background of your character. Every time you choose to give, without the need for acknowledgement, you're reinforcing a relationship with money that isn't about ego or appearance. You're training yourself to make financial decisions for the right reasons, because the action itself is worth taking, not because of how it will look to the people watching. That clarity, practiced over years, shows up in every financial decision you make. The person who gives anonymously for 20 years tends to make better investment decisions, better business decisions, better decisions about who to trust, because they've been quietly building a habit of acting from genuine conviction rather than from the need to be validated. But that's only the first thing we're exploring today. Keeping quiet about your generosity is one kind of discipline. What about keeping quiet about how you actually make your money? Because this is where things become more interesting. And if I'm being direct with you, more uncomfortable for most people to hear stated plainly. Let me ask you something worth sitting with. Honestly, have you ever found something that genuinely worked? A way of earning, a business model, a skill that was in real demand, a niche that nobody around you had noticed yet, and felt that immediate, almost magnetic pull to tell someone about it? To share the discovery, explain it, let people in on it? That impulse is completely understandable. When something clicks and starts producing real results, talking about it feels natural. It feels almost generous. But consider what actually happens the moment you do. Every reliable way of making money has, at its foundation, some kind of advantage. Something you're doing that most people in your space aren't doing yet. Maybe it's a supplier relationship nobody else has found, a specific type of customer your competitors are systematically overlooking, a skill that's genuinely rare in your market, an investment approach that hasn't hit the mainstream yet. Whatever form it takes, the value of that advantage is directly, almost mathematically, tied to how few people know about it. The moment it becomes widely understood, it becomes widely competed for. And competition at every level and in every market steadily compresses an advantage until nothing significant remains. That's not a pessimistic view of the world. That's simply the mechanism by which markets function. It's neutral and it's reliable. You can see this play out in ways that feel almost mundane once you start noticing them. The restaurant was extraordinary before the food writers discovered it, and it became impossible to get a reservation. The neighborhood was genuinely affordable until someone wrote an article calling it the next emerging area. the investment category that quietly produced consistent, unusual returns until a major financial publication ran a feature on it. None of these stopped working because something broke in the underlying thing. They stopped working because the information spread. The edge dissolved into public knowledge. What was once a quiet, well-protected advantage became just another crowded space where the original discoverers had already lost what made their position meaningful. The most financially consistent people I've observed over the years share something that takes a while to identify clearly, because it looks like a personality trait rather than a strategy. They're genuinely, almost unusually quiet about the specific mechanics of how they earn. Not arrogant about it, not evasive in a way that creates tension. Just quiet. They can talk comfortably about 100 other things, but the particular engine of their financial life, the specific approach, the relationship, the method that's actually working, that they hold close. They've learned, often through experience, that costs them something real, that explaining the mechanism is essentially giving it away. Once it's in the open, it belongs to everyone. So they treat it the way they'd treat any genuinely valuable asset, with care, with intentionality, and without unnecessary exposure. There's also a second reason for the silence that deserves equal weight. When you share openly how you make money, you invite opinions. And the opinions that arrive first and most confidently are almost never from people who understand your specific situation well enough to be genuinely useful. They're from people projecting their own fears, their own unexamined limitations, their own past experiences onto something that has nothing to do with those things. Is that really sustainable? What happens when the market shifts? I knew someone who tried something like that and it fell apart. These people are not your enemies. Most of them care about you. But their doubt, delivered before you've built enough momentum to be immune to it, carries a weight that can quietly stall you before you've had the chance to prove anything to yourself. Build first, protect the edge, explain it later, if at all. The results will communicate more clearly than any description you could offer. Think about the people in your life who seem to always have something working, some quiet project, some reliable income stream, some arrangement that produces results. Have you noticed they rarely talk about the specifics? They might discuss the philosophy behind their decisions, the general principles they operate by, but the exact mechanics, the who, the how, the specific numbers, those they keep close. It's not accidental. They've learned that the conversation that follows disclosure rarely improves the situation. And the conversation that follows a proven result is a completely different animal. Now, if protecting your income edge is about guarding something external, there's a different kind of silence that's about protecting something far more intimate, something that affects not just how strangers treat you, but how the people who've known you for years relate to you when the financial landscape between you starts to shift. And I think most people have felt some version of this without ever quite naming what it was. You've been in a situation where someone found out you were doing well financially. Maybe it came out sideways, a trip you mentioned, a renovation that revealed more than you intended, a comment that landed differently than you expected, and something shifted. Nothing dramatic, nothing you could point to precisely. But the dynamic changed. A request arrived that would never have come before. An assumption quietly formed about who handles certain expenses. A friendship developed a slight new weight that hadn't been there in all the years before. You didn't imagine it. That's what actually happens when people learn your net worth, even approximately. And I want to be precise here because this is genuinely not about distrusting the people in your life. Most of them aren't calculating anything deliberately. They aren't sitting down and running numbers, but human psychology responds to information about resources in ways that completely bypass conscious intention. When people know you have a surplus, they begin, without deciding to, without meaning to relate to you as someone who has a surplus. Requests that would have felt inappropriate 6 months ago now feel proportionate to to what they believe you have, not to them consciously. But underneath the surface of the friendship, something has shifted, and it changes the relationship in ways that are very difficult to undo once they've taken hold. There's a parable from ancient Babylon about a merchant who spent nearly 2 decades building a modest but genuine fortune through patient, careful trading. He was private by nature, cautious in almost everything he did, but he made one decision that cost him more than any bad trade ever had. He told his 3 closest friends what he'd accumulated, not to impress them, simply out of the particular, honest joy of finally having something real to show for all those years of restraint. Within 2 years, he had loaned money to 2 of them that was never repaid, absorbed the cost of a family celebration that somehow became his financial responsibility, and quietly backed a business arrangement he'd had serious private doubts about. Because saying no had become socially impossible, given what everyone now knew he had. He said afterward, in the rare moments he spoke about it, that the hardest part wasn't the money. It was sitting across the table from people who now saw him as a resource rather than a person. That the information had altered the relationship permanently. That shift, from being seen as a person to being seen as a resource, is something that genuinely wealthy people protect against with real, deliberate care over time. Not by being dishonest, not by being cold or withholding in their relationships, but by keeping the specific numbers to themselves. Because here's what they've discovered through experience. The less people know about the precise size of what you've built, the more they engage with who you actually are. Your ideas, your character, your company, not your balance sheet. The relationship stays clean because it isn't being filtered through calculations that neither of you is consciously running, but both of you are quietly making. And at this stage of life, a relationship genuinely free of that particular weight is worth protecting more carefully than almost anything in your financial portfolio. Before we go further, and I genuinely want to hear your answer in the comments, has this ever happened to you? Has a relationship ever shifted because someone found out more about your financial situation than you intended? You don't have to share the details. Just drop a yes below if you felt that weight. I think you'll be surprised by how many people have sat exactly where you're sitting right now. Now we move into something I think is even more emotionally complex, because it doesn't involve people outside your family. It involves what you plan to leave behind, and whether the people you love most should know about it in specific terms long before the time actually comes. Most people somewhere in their 50s or 60s start thinking seriously about this. It's completely natural. You've spent decades building something, and you want to know it's going to land somewhere meaningful. That instinct is good and right. But here's a question I'd ask you to sit with slowly. What does it actually do to a person's ambition, their drive, their willingness to work through difficulty, when they already know, in specific terms, exactly what's waiting for them? Not everyone responds to that knowledge the same way. But look honestly at what you've observed over the years, in your family, in your circle, in the stories you've accumulated about how people actually behave when they know there's a cushion with a specific number attached to it. Did that knowledge make them sharper, more capable, more willing to push through difficulty because they had something to prove to themselves? Or did it, quietly and almost imperceptibly, give them a permission to coast, a subtle license to relax an ambition that might otherwise have developed into something genuinely strong? There's a reason the most driven, most genuinely capable people you encounter tend to share one biographical characteristic: real uncertainty about their financial future at some formative stage. Not poverty, not suffering romanticized after the fact, but uncertainty. The kind that makes you develop capability because you simply have no reasonable option not to. That muscle, built when you have to figure things out because no one handed you the answer in advance, becomes the foundation of everything that follows. It doesn't go away. It compounds over decades into something no amount of inherited comfort can replicate. And you cannot give someone that muscle by telling them too early that they'll be provided for regardless. The most thoughtful, wealthy parents eventually arrive at a framework that sounds almost disappointingly simple, but contains a lifetime of hard-won wisdom about how human motivation actually works. Give your children enough to do anything they want to do, but not so much that they feel no pressing reason to do anything at all. Living that principle requires you to hold back information that would feel generous to share. It asks you to trust that the withholding is actually the more generous act, that you're giving the people you love the gift of becoming themselves fully before they know what they'll eventually inherit. There's something almost invisible that happens when a child or anyone knows a specific number is coming. The relationship they develop with difficulty changes. Obstacles that should build capacity instead become things to wait out. Challenges that should sharpen judgment become temporary inconveniences to endure until the cushion arrives. And the person experiencing this often doesn't know it's happening. They think they're being patient. They think they're being strategic. But what they're actually doing is living provisionally, half committed to the life they're currently building, because they know there's a different life waiting for them later. The silence around inheritance isn't about punishing anyone. It's about protecting them from a trap that's difficult to see from the inside. And if you've ever watched an estate become a source of conflict between people who once genuinely loved each other, you know exactly where that damage originates. Almost never from the money. Almost always from expectations that formed around numbers that were shared too early and too specifically, long before the time was right. There's one last thing I want to cover. And in some ways, this is the one that catches people most off guard. Because when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like the opposite. It feels like excitement, like connection, like letting someone you trust into something real that you've been carrying alone. You have a plan, something you've been quietly working through for weeks or months, a business you're finally ready to start, an investment you've decided to make, a direction you've chosen after a long period of living with the uncertainty of not yet having chosen. And the moment the decision crystallizes, there's a particular energy to it, a clarity that feels almost electric. So you tell someone, you sketch it out over coffee, talk it through, hear yourself say it for the first time, and feel it become more real in the saying. It feels good. It feels right. And you leave that conversation feeling like something has moved. And then, without any single thing going wrong, the energy starts to thin. Not because the plan changed, not because the person you told was unsupportive, but because of something specific that happens in the brain when you verbalize a goal to someone whose opinion carries weight with you. The brain registers the telling as a partial form of doing, a small, premature release of the pressure that was building toward real action. And that release, as satisfying as it feels, quietly reduces the urgency that was carrying you forward. You receive a fraction of the reward for work you haven't yet completed. And that fraction is precisely enough to soften the edge of your momentum at the moment you need it sharpest, before anything real has been built. This isn't intuition or folklore. Researchers who have studied goal pursuit carefully have found this pattern across multiple contexts. People who keep their intentions private follow through at measurably higher rates than people who announce the same intentions publicly. The announcement registers in the brain as a form of movement. Something happened. Something was shared and acknowledged. The drive that was supposed to sustain you all the way to the actual result has already spent a portion of itself in that exchange, before the real work has even begun. But there's a second problem that comes entirely from outside. When you share a plan before any part of it exists in the real world yet, you expose it to opinion. And the opinion that arrives first and most confidently is almost never from people who understand your situation deeply enough to be genuinely useful. It's from people responding with their own fears, their own limited experience, their own unexamined assumptions, all delivered with confidence onto something that hasn't had the chance to prove itself yet. Are you sure the timing is right? What happens if things don't develop the way you're expecting? I knew someone who tried something like that once. These people are not your enemies. Most of them genuinely care about you. But their doubt, landing on something that's still fragile and finding its shape, has a weight that your early confidence isn't yet equipped to carry. In the early stages of any real plan, before you've accumulated even a small amount of proof, that weight is sometimes enough. The people who build most consistently have developed a specific relationship with silence in the early stages of their work. They don't announce, they execute. The calls happen privately, the research happens privately. The inevitable early mistakes happen where no one is watching and no one is keeping a record. And then, when something real exists, when it has weight and evidence and shape, that's when they let it be seen. Not as a declaration of what they intend to do someday, as evidence of what they've already done. And that evidence generates a completely different kind of conversation. One that can't be argued out of existence, because the thing already exists and is already working. There's a man I heard about once, someone who had built a genuinely successful business over about 12 years, quietly, without any announcement. One evening at dinner, his adult daughter asked him why he'd never told anyone what he was building during those early years, not even close friends. He thought about it for a moment and said, "Because plans are fragile at the beginning, like a flame in the wind. You don't show a flame to the wind. You cup your hands around it until it's strong enough to burn on its own." She said she'd never forgotten that image. And honestly, neither have I. So protect the plan. Let it develop in the quiet. Build the foundation before you describe the structure. And when it's real, genuinely, tangibly real, let the results speak. They will say it better than you ever could have said it in advance. Now, I want to stop here and ask you something I'd genuinely like to hear you answer below. Of everything we've covered today, your giving, the way you earn, your net worth, what you're planning to leave behind, and the plans you're still quietly working on, which one have you been the most open about without fully thinking it through? Which one are you sitting with differently right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I think you'll find you're not alone in whatever answer honestly comes to you. And if any part of this conversation shifted something, even slightly, even in just one area of how you think about this, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell on. This is exactly the kind of conversation we keep having here. Honest, grounded, no pressure, just the things that actually matter when you're building something real at this stage of your life. So let's bring it all the way back to where we started. The people who have quietly built real lasting financial security, they're not smarter than everyone else. They're not luckier. They've just learned somewhere along the way that what you don't say protects you just as much as what you do. Your giving stays pure when it stays private. Your edge stays sharp when it stays yours. Your relationships stay real when people aren't doing math in the back of their minds every time they look at you. Your family stays hungry when the finish line isn't already drawn for them. And your plans stay alive when they're not exposed before they're ready. None of this is about secrecy for its own sake. It's about understanding that not every truth needs an audience. Some things grow better in the quiet. If even one of these 5 things shifted something for you today, even slightly, I want you to do one thing before you scroll away. Pick the one that hits closest to home and commit to handling it differently this week. Not a big, dramatic change, just one quiet decision. And drop Silent Rich in the comments right now. I read them. I want to know which one landed for you.